Well, welcome to all of you that could join us tonight. I appreciate all of you coming out on this early July evening. For those of you watching at home, the school committee has just returned from executive session, where we conducted a strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. We will now continue with our regular school committee meeting. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast live by Boston City TV on YouTube, as well as Comcast Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and FiOS Channel 1962. It will be rebroadcast at a later date. If you would like to speak this evening, but have not yet signed up, please see our staff person, Ms. Lena Parvex, in the hallway. Sign up for public comment this evening will close at 6:15 p.m. I'd first like to begin by acknowledging that we're in a period of transition here at BPS. And with any transition comes challenges, But I want to talk about how we're going to be stronger because of that. This has been a rapid transition. And I think, as many of us have had an opportunity within our committee over the last few weeks and in our executive sessions that we've held on this issue, the process hasn't been ideal, but it's a process that we've had nonetheless. And we're ready to move forward with a candidate that we view as a consensus candidate to lead this district forward and lead us in the near term with the work that needs to be done to keep this district moving and serving our 57,000 students across the city every day. In a few moments, I want to talk about a little bit on the next steps for the superintendent search, and I want to talk a little bit about how that will play out over the next few months. So we are, of course, here to take a vote tonight on appointing Ms. Laura Perrill as the interim superintendent for the district. But I want to stress a phrase that I think might have been lost a few times in the conversations over the last few days and weeks. It is truly an interim position. We are intended and we are intending to engage in an authentic, full search for a permanent superintendent to lead this district. That will be open, that will be transparent, that will be committed to finding someone who will lead this district for the long term. And I'm not really none of us are ready to talk about that in any length right now. But you can have our word that we will get to that, and we will schedule an agenda item for the July 16th meeting, which is a regularly scheduled session of the Boston School Committee in a few short weeks, to talk a little bit more about what that search will look like. And I can assure you as well that as we move through the fall and we have meetings on our regular schedule starting in September once again, we will continue to have regular updates on the status of that superintendent search. But before we go too far down that road, I also want to take a moment, and I think all of us as well want to say a few words, to thank Dr. Tommy Chang for his 3 years of leadership within this district. Over the years, Dr. Chang has laid the groundwork for promising teaching and learning initiatives, and we're asking Ms. Perrill to take and carry many of those initiatives forward. But we also want to state, and this is something that I made as a personal pledge to Dr. Chang, and I know many of us feel the same way, I want to take a moment to just refute some of the reports out there in the media with respect to the recent ICE suit that's been filed by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and has, in my opinion, and I think it's fair to say on behalf of my fellow members, unfairly portrayed Dr. Chang. Dr. Chang is somebody that is resolutely in support of our immigrant families, and he's worked day in and day out over his 3 years to support and protect those families and those students within our district. And so we want to take a minute to acknowledge that. Before we move on, I think I will ask if there's anyone else that does want to speak up on with a few words for Dr. Chang before we move into this tonight's business. Ms. Oliver Davila.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know change is always very challenging, no matter if it's good or bad change, but I do believe we can move forward strongly together. I do want to just take a moment to recognize Dr. Chang for some of the work that he has done. I remember coming to the bowling building when he was putting his 100-day plan together and seeing the diverse leadership team that he had around him, and how emotional I got seeing that. Growing up in Boston, I never got to see people in positions of leadership that looked like me. It was very important having a daughter that she'll be able to see diversity in our leadership and positions of power. So I thank him for that. I thank him for all the work that he has done around equity, around culture and language, and bringing it to the forefront. It's been a long time, or never, I should say, in any way, since I've been around in these circles that this discussion was front and center. So I thank him for that. And lastly, I just ditto the chair's comments. I worked very closely with Tommy on strengthening the policy so that if ever ICE came to our buildings, that there was very strong protocols and people knew what to do. We would never share any student's information. And if anyone knows Tommy at all, knows that he is very pro-immigrant, being an immigrant himself. He gets his haircut at Fernandez, goes to eat at Yelly's. I mean, it's unfortunate that these two things came together because we know that that's not what Dr. Chang stands for. So I just want to make sure that people know that, and that our families know that we welcome everyone, no matter your status, no matter who you are, we welcome you. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver-Davila. Dean Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to echo the points mentioned, and first say thank you to Dr. Chang for his leadership and his care for the diversity of all students, and for him, all really meant all. And I just want to honor his work. I want to honor his experience and really wanting to raise awareness and raise the voices of students like him. And so I also am saddened at the unfortunate turn of events and the rapidness of the events. I do look forward to moving forward with a more transparent process, a collaborative process, as I've stated to you, Mr. Chair, and to as many people that I've been in touch with over the last few weeks. The school committee is a team, and we function as a team. And so I am grateful for this team and the experiences that we all bring to the table. But I also know that moving forward, we need to make sure we articulate clearly the plan, the process, as we continue to lead the district. So thank you, Dr. Chang, for your work, for your service to our students, and thank you for raising the profile of students who are marginalized.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. I echo the words of my colleagues. For me, I think, I'm very sad at this moment of what has occurred and how it has occurred. I really felt that through all my workings with Dr. Chang, he really did care about all of the children of this district. And even, when he first came, he didn't know a lot about early childhood. He admitted that, but he really championed our youngest students and really wanted us to have a strong beginning, because that's where we have the most opportunity to deal with issues around the achievement gap. I really thank him for the work in helping us get through the redo of the Opportunity Achievement Gap Task Force and beginning to get through this first year of actually having an implementation plan that it's been very difficult. I mean, it's a lot of new work, hard work for folks, but he was very much a champion of making sure that as a district we kept that first and foremost, so that I hope that we will continue to do that work even deeper, and that it's a moment for all of us to do some reflection. Mm-hmm. One person is leaving the district right now, but everybody else is still here. We have 57,000 kids who count on us, each and every one of us, every day to make sure that their lives are moving forward. So I hope that people will take a pause to sort of reflect on their role and what we need to do, so that we really all do work together to move forward and to make Boston proud of the work that we do on behalf of all of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Dr. Ureta.
I am too very sad by what's happened. And I think that the last week has been one that has, I think, allowed us all to reflect a lot on how we do our business here in Boston, in the Boston Public Schools, what our role is, And I come away with a tremendously deep sadness about how all this has come down. I can't get away from the fact that this is Dr. Chang is a young man of color who rose very high as an educator. And I am hoping that we really examine how this all happened, and so that we're better prepared for leadership at this level, and understanding that we have to do better than we have done for Dr. Chang. I think that for me, my experience with Dr. Chang is one that through my work with English language learners task force, it was really evident that I was out, in front of something totally different than what I had experienced with any other superintendent in the history of the Boston Public Schools. This man got this. We did not have to explain why it was important to have dual language. We did not have to explain why it was important to teach children with disabilities in their language. There was nothing that we were explaining because it was his experience, his lived experience. So that fact that he got it went a long way because it allowed us to go deeper. I did not have to spend any time of the little time that I had with him, trying to convince him that this is something that we would do, but rather getting to the deeper areas of the things that really needed to happen in the district for us to move forward. I'm gonna miss that a lot. There's a reality that he brought to our consciousness, and it was his free and uninhibited support of equity and of speaking about equity and race in an open form, in an open way. I think there have been people, probably in the district, I know in other areas, that felt that he was always talking about race. And I kept always saying, well, thank God somebody is, because we have, in the area of education, we always have to be conscious of race. And I think I will also miss that. That sort of that openness to really just explore and understand and know that the profound truth that race means to education at all levels in our country. The efforts on equity are really important. I've had a lot of discussions about how they're moving forward, but I believe profoundly that we're on the right track. We may have to tweak, we may have to change, we may have to make it better, but this is the right way to go, and we cannot abandon that, and that we owe to Dr. Chan. The other piece that I have really appreciated is his laser focus on instruction, and the quality of instruction, and the support of the teachers, and trying to really do well by that. I'm hoping that we can continue to do that. Like Alex Oliver, I did want to talk a little bit about the situation with ICE, because I think in talking to him after he decided he was leaving, the one thing that I think was most painful to him was the connection with ICE. That whatever happened was in connection with ICE. I happened with Suzanne Lee to have been part of the discussion initially of this case back in December. When we also raised, all of us raised, the question of whether this was a single incident or it was an incident where there may be other cases. So the questions that are raised by the suit are questions that we raised collectively, because it was important to understand whether we were up against just one case or whether we were up against something different. I believe that Dr. Chang and DPS did all it could to try to move forward on trying to understand that question. I wasn't privy to all the discussions, but I know that the barrier was not coming from him, and it was not coming from the work that was being done in relationship to English language learners, in relationship to immigrant students. I mean, this district was very forward on these issues. So I know for a fact that that was not the case. The question here is that all of a sudden this young man has this ICE sign hanging in front of him, and since that happened, I've spent most of my time talking to people about the fact that that was not the case, that that is not true. And I really encourage you to go forward and really, everybody that tells you, well, he left because of the, you know, he was connected with ICE, I want you to understand that that was not the case, and that you sort of fight it back, because it's a profound, profound injustice for this man. I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him. I had a lot of fights with him in the last 3 years.
We all know that.
Huh?
Yeah, we all know that.
But he, you know, it was. We were all trying to make it better.
Yeah.
We were all trying to make it better, and I'm sorry that it went the way it was. I mean, I think we had a lot of issues that could have gone better, but I think in some of these issues that are important, like the discussion of equity, the discussion of race, the discussion of immigrant students in this particular environment, with the way that he carried it out was really refreshing, and hopefully we can carry it on among ourselves in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Ugarte. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my fellow members. And I'm glad we have an opportunity to speak about Dr. Chang for a few minutes. As someone who spent an enormous amount of time with him in his time as superintendent, when he was considering coming to the city, when we were recruiting, working hard to recruit a strong, talented, diverse pool of final candidates from across the country to come here, spent a lot of time talking with him and the other candidates about what it was like to work in Boston. And as many folks have heard me say publicly the past couple of years, we asked him to do two really hard things. We asked him to learn how, even though he was running a district of 95,000 students in LA, he was not the ultimate superintendent. And so we asked him to learn how to be superintendent. And there's nothing like sitting in that seat and making the final decisions and being accountable. And we asked him to learn Boston. And I would say kind of facetiously half the time, I'm not sure which one was a harder job. And I say this as a cynical, lifelong Bostonian. We can be a tough city on folks. We demand excellence. We want excellence in everything. We want the best for our schools and for our students. And Boston can be a tough environment. And I think Dr. Chang worked very hard to learn it. I think this past week and a half has caused all of us to do a lot of self-reflection, and I'm sure many other people in the community are as well. I have started to see a distinction that this committee really focused in on academic performance, on academic programs that Superintendent Chang was implementing, whether we felt it fit in with our strategic plan, and we were supportive of him on those issues, and whether it was the Opportunity Achievement Gap Task Force that we started, that was endorsed by the superintendent and became the Office of Opportunity Achievement Gap, and how the tremendous work that Dr. Rose and others are doing to really implement and make sure that it is institutionalized, our focus on the Opportunity Achievement Gap. And I thank Mr. Mudd for calling our attention to that at every single meeting, because maybe we don't say every single time what the impact will be on the Opportunity Achievement Gap, because we knew Superintendent Chang got it and was committed to it. But I think that does have to be part of our working practice going forward, so there's never any doubt on that is job one as far as we're concerned. His work around, and work that he did in that regard, it wasn't just talking about it, but implementing excellence for all, as an example. The exam school initiative, so more of our youth have, in Boston Public Schools, could have an opportunity to get prepped for the exam school tests, et cetera. A number of small steps he was taking across the board that collectively were really starting to have some real impact, and what he taught us about that as well. The second piece was his work on culturally and linguistically sustaining practices, and how important that is to, particularly to our teaching force and our school leadership force across the entire district. It is no accident that the three leaders of our exam schools are graduates of our exam schools and are people of color, and two of them are women of color. That was Dr. Chang put in his actions, and by the way, absolutely the most qualified candidates to lead those schools. So, but making sure that happens so our students can succeed and understand how important it was. And lastly, his work on social and emotional learning and wellness and how much he taught all of us on that, being the first to making that an assistant superintendent position in the country, trying as hard as he can to increase investments in school psychologists, guidance counselors, school nurses, and social workers, to the fact that we spend 9-to-1 in Boston on that as the proactive way to work with our schools. Yes, that's attached to school safety, and our Boston Public Schools police officers do excellent work on that. But it's also the proactive work that the superintendent has done to think about the emotional and psychological and physical health of our students and how that's conducive to learning. And so I think we're making great progress on that. Where the challenges operationally, there are in every city, particularly an older city with 128 schools, and more importantly, let's not forget, federal budgets being cut, state budgets that used to be 31% of our budget now being 14%, the increased reliance on the school budget to make it happen. Dr. Chang had to make tough decisions and tough recommendations. And I know personally how much it pained him, some of the recommendations he made. I also know how people, challenged some of the recommendations that he made, and I get that. I think this committee can do a better job going forward, working with our superintendent, interim, et cetera, on understanding the interaction between the academic and the operational, and all of us committing as well to working with that community and parent and school and student engagement to make our next leaders more successful, both on an interim basis and, having a robust search, coming up with candidates, and when we name a permanent, that as well. I will say I have to chime in on what my fellow colleagues as well have said, that with Dr. Chang, all means all. And this was so deeply personal to him. And we all saw that, we all knew it. We were all incredibly pained how people made assumptions. And I know that happens when I look at news stories in other cities and I see this happen and that happen, and I make an assumption. And I know people, particularly on social media in other cities, really made assumptions about what that meant about Dr. Chang. And some of what I saw really bothered me because I know his actions. I know what's in his heart. We all do. This is deeply, deeply personal to him. And he taught us a lot about how Boston could be a national leader in working with all of our students, including the undocumented students, and how important it was and still is to make them feel comfortable in school and safe in schools. And so I'm glad we have all spoken up on that issue. Because at his heart, he's an educator. We saw it when he was in classrooms. He got it. He's been a teacher. He's been a principal. He's been an administrator. He had has a growing national reputation when people look at the good things that have happened in Boston. And I have no doubt he will continue to be successful in his career. And I thank him for his time in Boston. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. And, I want to loop back on just a couple of the specific initiatives that you highlighted in your comments, because I think there's a commonality there. When we think and move into the discussion about what it is that we expect from an interim superintendent, it's a couple things. One is we want to get the schools open and safe and working on time and as soon as the school year begins in September, right? We've also talked about the need for truly transparent, authentic engagement with our communities on many of the biggest problems that face our district. And those are facilities problems, the busing and assignment problems, our high schools, and the way that we deal with off-track youth, as we've read recently in many reports. And we've got our home-based assignment equity analysis coming up as well, that will speak as well to a number of the issues that we need to deal with immediately and with care in our district. And that's something that we really need our interim to take on, and I think that work in many respects is long-term work and will bleed into a permanent role as well. But nevertheless, the third area that we really want an interim to focus on are those items that you raised, Mr. O'Neill, and I think we've heard the tenor of equity and strong academic rigor throughout all of our comments. And we've reflected that in the offer letter that we'll talk about a little bit later for the interim superintendent. But specifically, focusing on opportunity achievement gaps, closing those gaps, working towards those efforts in many of the meaningful ways that have been begun under Dr. Chang and will be continue to be implemented and supported by the executive staff that has stayed behind. These culturally and linguistically sustaining practices that not only lift up students that maybe are from another country or speak a different language, but maybe have special needs or learn differently, or really in any way need that extra little bit of support in the classroom, that recognition that I think really can open doors for kids when they come to school each day. And third, the social and emotional learning and wellness that we've talked about so much just over the last year throughout our budget process. That's the urgent work of this district. That's the urgent work that each person in this building and each one of those people in those 128 buildings outside of this building will carry on. And that's the work that our interim will carry on and help lead. And that's the work that a permanent superintendent, when we do commence that search and move forward, will lead for us as well. So with that, I do want to just close on a note with Dr. Chang. He will be treated per his contract on his exit. His last day will be next Friday. And we, again, wish him the best in his future endeavors. This is a young man that has a long and bright career ahead of him, and we wish him the best. Now, before we move on to discuss the vote on the interim superintendent, we do want to take a moment. I don't want you folks to sit out there for too long, and pause for public comment. And we're working a little bit out of our normal order this evening, so you'll forgive me if it feels a little helter-skelter, but this isn't the normal consent calendar and agendas and reports as we usually have in these meetings. But nevertheless, I think it's important for us to hear from all of you at this point before we move on to the business of the evening. So Ms. Sullivan, would you please call for public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Loconto. The public comment period is an opportunity for parents and other concerned parties to make brief presentations to the school committee on pertinent school issues. Questions on specific school matters are not answered at this time, but are referred to the superintendent for later response. Questions on specific policy matters are not answered at this time, but may be the subject of later discussion by the committee. We have 22 speakers this evening, so in accordance with our policy, we will have time reduced to 2 minutes per person, and I'll remind you when you have 30 seconds remaining. Speakers may not reassign their time to others. Large groups addressing the same topic are encouraged to consolidate their remarks or choose a spokesperson to provide testimony. Written testimony is appreciated and encouraged. Please state your name and affiliation before you begin. TV cameras will only record speakers who face the committee. We'll begin this evening with Counselor Anissa Asabi George, and she'll be followed by Carolyn Kane and Lindsay McIntyre.
Good evening, Counselor.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the school committee. My name is Anissa Asabi George, City Councilor at Large and Chair of the Council's Committee on Education. I am also a former teacher and a parent of Boston Public School students. I am here on two fronts. One, to voice my support for the appointment of Interim Superintendent Laura Perrell. I look forward to being a partner in the work that lies ahead and that must continue from where we are now, and looking to provide, I think as committee member O'Neill mentioned, the best for our kids and looking for that achievement of excellence for all of our students. I certainly appreciate Laura's previous work and look forward to continuing her effort on behalf of all the students of the Boston Public Schools, and I appreciate her relationship with a number of schools, a considerable number of schools in our district, and have confidence that she will get to know the rest quickly. Today previously I submitted a letter to the Boston Globe, a letter to the editor that was published today, and I'd just like to read it into the record. While the departure of one Boston Public Schools superintendent, the hiring of an interim chief, and the search for a new superintendent
can mean turmoil for an already chaotic system. It also is an opportunity for positive change. But before making any changes, any superintendent, doing it from my phone, any superintendent must understand the district's challenges and appreciate its goals. Given the enormity of the job, earning families' confidence and motivating BPS employees to persevere through change is essential. We need a leader to reallocate human resources, with more people working to fulfill students' and families' education needs and fewer in the central office working on extra activities. We need a teacher in this position, someone who has spent enough time in the classroom to know what a policy decision might mean in practice, not just in theory. The algorithm-designed proposal to change school start times, which caused parents so much distress and resulted in countless hours of meetings, is a perfect example of why this is so. Of course, a resume of relevant experience is a given, but BPS deserves a superintendent who gets that wisdom is a shared resource. Listening to teachers, principals, and parents, kids, and even city councilors takes time, but good decisions are worth the effort. Our new superintendent, both our interim and our eventual permanent superintendent, must invest in relationships and believe in the benefits of transparency to repair relationships with school families. Finding this leader won't be easy, but my kids and those of all BPS families are worth it. I would also like to add that although we are in a time of change, there are a number of key pieces of work that I think are critical to continue and not miss any opportunity to improve on. We need to make sure that we get all the resources that we can into our schools. We need to figure out build BPS, and we need to have a very transparent and public process about what lies ahead, not just a spending graph, but a working list. We need to figure out grade configurations. The success of our schools depends so greatly on us figuring out, stop talking about, and figure out grade configurations in BPS, as well as start and end times, transportation, BPS athletics, and Madison Park, as well as school safety and, of course, supporting our students who are experiencing homelessness. I no doubt know that your interest lays in these pieces as well as many others, and I look forward to working in the coming months with the interim and participating actively in the search for a permanent. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Carolyn Kane, followed by Linda McIntyre and Lisa Geisbond.
Good evening, Ms. Kane.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Kane, and I'm the chair of Boston SpedPAC. More importantly, I am the parent of a child in BPS who's been in BPS now for the last 15 years. 10 of those years, I've played the role of chair of Boston SpedPAC, representing 11,000 students in BPS. And first, I want to, on behalf of the students with disabilities in BPS, thank Dr. Chang for his work and for his true partnership with SpedPAC during his tenure. I think that, you know, transition is hard, and it always is. I've been chair now, you know, for a decade, and I've been through 3 different superintendents, a number of different special education directors, and starting relationships is always difficult, but it's also our responsibility to do so. And all of us need to put the best interests of our students first and foremost, regardless of any other issues. I will say that when I worked on the External Advisory Committee, I got to know Laura Perel in our work there. I'm also very familiar with the work of Ed Vestas throughout the Boston public school systems, and she is a very strong and accomplished leader. So I look forward to working with her on the go forward. I stand ready to assist her in any way possible with regard to special education issues in the Boston public schools. And, you know, we need to get through this together, and we need to come together as a community in the best interest of our children to make sure that they know that we're going to do the right thing by them now and always. So, again, thank you for the time. I look forward to moving forward and would encourage everybody here and throughout the BPS community to come together and move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kane.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Linda McIntyre. She'll be followed by Lisa Geisbond and Kayla Morse.
Good evening, Ms. Mack.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and good evening, school committee members. So I walk in this room and I look up and I see this beautiful mural that lightens my heart. And that mural is a direct result of bringing schoolwork beyond the walls of the classroom. And in addition to that, that work was spearheaded by the Arts Initiative that was given to us through Laura's work at Ed Vesters. So what a testimony to see her work live and in action in this room. And I'll just couple that with the fact that the children who produced that work were some of our historically marginalized children. So I'm Dr. Lindsay McIntyre. I'm the headmaster of the Burke High School. And tonight I'm here to share with you why I stand for Laura in this interim position. One of the things that Laura has been able to do with her work at the Burke High School is to bring us into collective organization and not leave us in the silo of the pain of turnaround. Through working with Laura, my teachers at school were able to go and participate in zeroing in on math, even though it was a middle school experience. The high school math teachers at the Burke participated. They said, other teachers sat on committees to help determine which schools would receive seed funding for which projects. Our school also received seed funding for teacher collaboration. Laura has been instrumental in her work with the Burke in multiple ways, not to mention that she's been able to help us share the culture of our school community with the greater world. I have been throughout the state talking about turnaround, writing about turnaround, all directed by Laura through her sharing connections and collaborations with me through the DESE, through the Rennie Center, through Ed Resource Strategies. All of these moves were spearheaded by her commitment to the work of turnaround and then the work of School on the Move. I'm excited to think what she can do for us. I think that many times the structures in our system are so calcified that when we're trained as superintendents, we're trained to live within those structures. But when we come from an outside experience, it might make it easier to disrupt some of the silos and some of the structures that stop equity from being its very best. So I'm excited about the work that Laura can do for the Burke High School, but more than that, for the city of Boston. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Geisbond, followed by Kayla Morse and Claire Shaw.
Evening, Ms. Geisbond.
Good evening, Chair Locanto, members of the school committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Lisa Geisbon, and I'm Executive Director of Citizens for Public Schools. CPS has advocated since 1982 for democratically accountable, fully funded public schools statewide. We believe all children, regardless of race, color, nationality, gender, social status, deserve equal educational opportunities so they can participate successfully in our civic and economic life. BPS teachers, students, and families have much to be proud of, including expanded access to arts education, thanks to the work of Laura Peril and Ed Vesters. However, BPS has significant work to do to fulfill goals such as those outlined in CPS's mission. In that light, we, like others who I believe will speak tonight, have some serious concerns about the process and criteria for selecting the person who will lead BPS going forward. From all accounts, decisions about major changes will soon be made, changes that include grade structure, school construction, funding, and other matters that will affect thousands of families. If those decisions are to be made well, they must be informed by firsthand knowledge in the system, of those in the system, parents, students, and teachers. The person who will lead Boston Public Schools through those changes must know how schools and school systems work through personal experience inside a large school system that serves students with complex and varied needs. It is not enough for that leader to be smart and savvy. Experience is critical, and only an experienced leader can inspire confidence among those who will carry out these changes. That means the next permanent superintendent must be someone with long experience as a teacher and as an administrator. That person must be in place before any major changes are made. To earn a professional superintendent's license in Massachusetts, a candidate must complete a one-year induction program with a trained mentor and work for 3 years as an assistant superintendent or superintendent under an initial license. The leader of by far the most complex school system in the state, faced with enormous challenges, should at least meet those requirements. The students, families, and dedicated educators of Boston deserve nothing less. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kayla Morse, and she'll be followed by Claire Shaw and John Mudd.
Good evening, school committee. My name is
Evening.
Kayla Morse, and I stand here as a former Boston Public School inclusion educator and also a current colleague of Laura Perrell. I could not be more encouraged and motivated that Laura has been appointed as interim superintendent. She is truly a leader that I respect, have confidence in, and I believe will do right by all students in Boston Public Schools. I've had the greatest privilege of being a Boston Public School teacher. Every year working with the highest needs populations at the Holmes, Dudley Street Neighborhood Charter, and the Henderson Inclusion School. And I've seen firsthand the incredible amount of heart, wit, thoughtfulness, and empathy required to serve in these schools. I hold a very high standard for anyone, teacher, staff, administrator, or system leader, that says they have the best interests for all students. But most of all, I look at their heart, I listen intently to their biases, and most importantly, examine their actions. What I have observed from Laura, as someone that has been connected with EdVestors for the past couple of years, has been a leader that listens, not just as a theoretical exercise, but to gain knowledge and expertise from those on the ground to help move the needle towards success. When I talk about Laura, I often want to redefine the word leader as we know it in this world, and especially in this system. Laura leads with learning. Laura is a collaborative and knowledgeable leader, or shall I say learner, in any space that she works in. As a teacher with BPS, I was often frustrated with the lack of urgency for equity in the district, and discouraged by the lack of morale that burdened school leaders and school teachers, often fueled by mandates from the top. Given these real current issues, I have immense faith that Laura will be an equity warrior for students, families, and teachers, and that she will make these her top priority, while also bearing the strength to fight an internal system that has fell short of following through on all promises for all kids. It has been my absolute joy working not for her, but with her leadership as our guide. I am overwhelmed with a new sense of hope for Boston Public Schools. Our students and families they deserve the best in the interim. They deserve a leader that is committed to learning from the community, leading with urgency, and laboring with a heart for true equity in our district for all students. And I truly believe Laura Perrell is the right person for this work in the interim. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Morse.
Next, we'll hear from Claire Shaw, followed by John Mudd and Selena Miranda.
Good evening, Ms. Shaw.
Good evening, school committee. Good evening, Attorney LaConta, Member LaConta. I'm here to talk about the suggested choice of Laura Perrell to serve as interim superintendent. Laura has been a colleague, someone I've known since the mid-90s. She's a dynamic person who's brought enormous leadership to the education sector in her role as the founder and CEO of EdVestors. The organization has raised over $26 million since its inception and has had an impact on thousands of Boston Public School students. Has a diverse staff and board, and the major projects it undertakes: arts expansion, zeroing in on math, school solution seed fund, and support for demonstration and career and technical education projects were all begun thoughtfully with research and input from many others because they are seen as levers that will improve the system and unlock areas of inequity. Since founding Investors in 2002, she's been in almost every Boston Public School building. Her work on the School Choice Advisory Council was incredible. Many of us disagree about the outcome, but it would have been very difficult to achieve any outcome without her work and the work of others who gave enormous amounts of time and energy. Her diligence and dedication to the system are well known. As head of the data team, she not only got deep in the weeds on every aspect of the system, but she also made time to go to neighborhoods, speak with families and students all over the city. She internalized their feedback and brought that back to all of us. You'll find her to be an attentive listener who gathers feedback and information, and I'm glad that she has the knowledge, gravitas, familiarity to address you, the mayor's staff, Desi, and the city council on behalf of BPS. She'll work hard and learn fast, and she'll help shape a system that can attract a full-time superintendent who will help in education in the city attain what it's always had the potential to do, to serve every student. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Mudd, followed by Selena Miranda and Helen Daher.
Good evening, Mr. Mudd.
Good evening. I've been, I hope, a provocative and respectful advocate for school reform and the improvement of student performance for 25 years in this city. And I must say that I am profoundly disturbed and discouraged by the current process and potential consequences of the appointment of the interim superintendent. This is not about Laura Perel. She's perceptive, thoughtful, creative, a person of deep integrity. She deserves the help of all of us in her new role. But frankly, the mayor has said that public schools need an education leader and a manager. Frankly, I don't see that heading a small education foundation provides the experience and preparation to run a billion-dollar school district with over 55,000 students and 10,000 staff. What hurts me and many others that I talk to is that for the second time, the mayor and the school committee have not taken advantage of strong Latino candidates with track records as big city superintendents who were available to take the job in Boston. One 3 years ago and one last week. Boston is now 42% Latino. It was and is time to try Latino leadership, and this leadership is there. Boston, as we know, serious education problems with long-term decreases in achievement gaps. Facing this kind of problem, the other issues you've talked about are not interim assignments. They require sustained leadership, and that is what you as a school committee need to be looking for. The school district, the consequences of the recent process in dealing with the superintendency are serious. I fear it will make it much harder for Boston to attract top-level candidates. I think the whole question of interim versus permanent is crucial in that respect. I think, unless I'm mistaken, when Laura met with the Boston Globe editorial board, she said she would not rule out applying for a permanent position. Maybe I misread, but I think that issue needs to be clarified. Finally, I fear that the institution of the school committee itself has been undermined in this process. I would urge you to assert yourselves, to convince the mayor that a strong school committee, a strong superintendent are essential to dealing with the education challenges in Boston today. Thank you for indulging me again.
Thank you, Mr. Mudd.
Thank you, Mr. Mudd. Our next speaker is Selena Miranda. She'll be followed by Helen Daher and Wendell Knox.
Good evening, Ms. Miranda.
Good evening, members of the school committee. My name is Selena Miranda, and I'm the Executive Director of Hyde Square Task Force, which is a creative youth development and social justice organization located in Boston's Latin Quarter in the High Jackson Square neighborhood of Jamaica Plain. I want to first thank the school committee for recognizing the great work of Dr. Chang. And I hope that everything that has been said today continues to be resonated and thought about as a permanent superintendent is selected. But I am here tonight to express my support of Laura Perel as interim superintendent. Laura's 15 years of experience running EdVestors has put her in a close relationship to Boston's public schools, not only to move her organization's efforts forward, but also the district's. She's had to work collaboratively to move important initiatives forward. Through EdVestors, she has honed in on the components that make for quality education for all of our students. She knows what innovation, thinking outside the box, can do to improve the educational experiences for all of our students. At Heights Square Task Force, we have been able to contribute to this innovation by bringing Afro-Latin dance to Boston Public Schools, where a majority of the students are of Latino descent. Through our work, Latino youth are able to study dance forms rooted in their cultural heritage. I am heartened to know that Laura understands not only as a leader, but as a parent of BPS graduates, that a quality education is our most important responsibility, but not the only one. A focus solely on core subjects is a short-sighted approach to education. Laura knows that we need to provide access to multiple opportunities, such as the arts, that not only reinforce a quality experience, but also give students the platform to tap into their creativity, their hopes and aspirations. Moreover, I trust that Laura understands issues of equity, especially in a place like Boston, as she has had to navigate and move her work forward in what often feels like a very complex and perplexing city. In this vein, Laura knows that she needs to be thoughtful and work with key stakeholders to improve the district. She has a good relationship with community organizations like Heights Square Task Force and can draw on this experience to build bridges and help find ways to work in partnership for the benefit of all of our children. At this time, it makes sense to tap someone you trust, someone who knows the challenges that we face and can help steer things forward. I believe Laura's passion for education and the city are a great combination for the role. While Laura does not bring a background in teaching or school leadership, she knows how to work with the Boston Public Schools. She has the people smarts, the intellect, a collaborative spirit, and the determination to move us forward until a permanent appointment is made. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miranda.
Thank you, Ms. Miranda.
After Ms. Daher, we'll hear from Wendell Knox and Paula Elliott.
Welcome back.
Hi, good evening,
How are you?
everybody. It's nice to be here tonight. My name is Helen Daher, previous school committee member, and I'm here this evening in support of Laura Perel as the interim superintendent. Our children were at the Hernandez School in Roxbury together, two-way bilingual school, and I remember, if anyone remembers Margarita Muñiz, I remember hearing about Laura before I had ever met her. I remember Margarita boasting about the fact that she had this wonderful, smart woman who used to write grants for her if she asked her. And Laura, in her time when she was home with her young children, volunteered her time writing grants for the two-way bilingual program because she was so supportive of it. And anyone who knows Margarita knows that accolades and compliments did not come readily from that wonderful principal that she was, and Laura Perel stood very high in her esteem. As a parent, Laura Perel walks the walk. She understands the challenges of being a Boston public school parent from day one. I look forward to having a talented, smart, supremely capable Boston public school parent helping to lead the schools. Laura Perel has been a persistent and constant person in terms of her tangible support of BPS through her work at EdVestors, her relationships with so many staff members at BPS, from superintendents to art teachers to paraprofessionals to the frontline staff working to educate our students. I've respected her work with me and Hardin Coleman and the other members of the External Advisory Committee a few years ago. She has an amazing ability to understand and synthesize information and produce the results that not only was she tasked with, but even more. She's tough, she's smart, she's organized, and she's a team player. And I'm delighted that she's a parent of Boston Public Schools from day one until her children graduated from high school with us. She has supported two-way bilingual school before it became a very popular thing to do amongst everybody. And she and her husband were actively involved in where I got to see them all the time, which is at Ballet Rocks behind the scenes. One of the treats where we took Carol Johnson right when she became superintendent so that she could watch the arts that we actively participated in right from the get-go. So I'm here very happy that Laura has been assigned to this position because I know she's very capable and she's a strong woman of tremendous integrity. So I'm also delighted to see my old friends. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris.
Our next speaker is Wendell Knox, and he'll be followed by Paula Elliott and Jose Lopez.
Good evening, Mr. Knox.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the school committee. My name is Wendell Knox. The bulk of my professional career was spent at Apt Associates Incorporated, an international research and consulting firm with offices in over 50 countries around the world, employing several thousand staff in managerial, technical, scientific, and administrative roles. I retired from that firm after 40 years, serving as its CEO for my final 17 years there. I continue to serve that firm as a member of its board, and I also serve on the boards of 4 other corporations and 4 not-for-profits, 3 of which focus on education and community development. I have known and worked with Laura Perel for over 10 years as a member of the board of directors of Edvestors, Ms. Perel's most recent employer, where she served as founding president and CEO for 16 years. For the past 5 years, I have served as chairman of the Edvestors board, which has required a close, collaborative working relationship with Ms. Perel in pursuit of Edvestors' school improvement mission. As chairman, one of my principal duties is to lead reviews of the CEO's performance, thus giving me detailed insights into her leadership and managerial skills. As president and CEO of Edvestors, Ms. Perel's outstanding leadership and management performance is evidenced by the many positive contributions to improvement of education in Boston, chiefly in BPS. The documented expansion of arts educational opportunities to an additional 17,000 BPS students over the past few years is a notable example. Ms. Perel and her organization played a pivotal role in mobilizing, focusing, and managing the many institutional, private, and governmental resources required to produce this outstanding result for our children. And even while successfully managing this ambitious undertaking, in parallel, Ms. Perel's organization successfully launched several other important initiatives in pursuit of school improvement, displaying her ability to organize and manage a number of complex programs and initiatives involving a large number of individuals and organizations who must be galvanized and effectively led in order to achieve specific mission and organizational objectives. It is my observation as one who ran a large, complicated organization that Ms. Perel has demonstrated the managerial skills and organizational savvy needed to successfully lead a complex institution like BPS. In particular, she is very skilled at choosing the right, talented professionals for each task, helping them to develop as a team, guiding them to set realistic objectives, and defining the efficient path to their success. She holds her staff to the highest standards of performance along that path, acknowledging and rewarding their success, while making needed adjustments and changes if necessary to improve the probability of success. She is also a good listener to superiors, subordinates, and to all key stakeholders. And critically important, after assessing the appropriate inputs, the potential benefits and risks, Ms. Perel will make a firm decision and implement it effectively. In my role as a corporate CEO and as a corporate director for several organizations, I've had the opportunity to observe many professionals on their journeys up the career ladder in quest of increasing leadership and management responsibilities. I have mentored quite a few of the most capable among them, and I've had to make choices among them or make recommendations to other decision makers as to who should be promoted to the top job. The central question in each instance was, Does the inherent risk-benefit calculation of choosing a given individual work in the best interest of my organization? This committee is faced with that question tonight, and in my view, you are blessed with a candidate whose career evidence, personal values and character, commitment to equity, and demonstrated dedication to the mission of providing the very best schools possible to Boston's children easily supports her appointment as the next interim superintendent of the Boston Public Schools. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. Our next speaker is Dr. Paula Elliott, and to be followed by Jose Lopez and Christine Langhoff.
Good evening, Ms. Elliott.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Paula Rivera Elliott. I offer comment on the immediate and long-term decision-making regarding Boston's next superintendent. I've worked over 35 years in teacher education, urban school professional development, and the focus of my work is really to prioritize listening to the voices and lives of teachers. So that is what's motivated me to come to this forum for the first time, actually, in my professional life in Boston. Upon hearing the WGBH radio interview with the nominee for the interim appointment, I solicited thoughts from teachers that I knew who were multiracial, multi-ethnic, religiously diverse, and currently working in Boston Public Schools. I sent them a text, I sent them the link, and I got 5 out of 6 responses early this morning. I wanted to know what they thought about any person in this particular role. As a researcher and professional development consultant, I've looked closely at the social political context and economic dynamics that adversely affect decisions about Black and brown communities in public schools. I am very familiar with the CLSP work and particularly the experiences that teachers have in trying to understand and embrace the attitudes and values as part of that rubric and framework, and they are greatly challenged. So I appreciate the substance of that work. I'm also a practicing artist, and I'm very appreciative of the Edvester's work in arts programming, absolutely. But I think that we still have to go into the weeds. This is not about any one particular individual, but I think that the decision-making really does require going into the weeds in terms of their beliefs and values. The informal solicitation of this diverse cluster of BPS teachers surfaced 3 patterns that I just wanted to share with you. That they wanted to have any candidate's evidenced track record regarding, 1, the relationship to charter school stakeholders, be they located in philanthropic, corporate, public, or private sector. Any candidate's beliefs about the value of having a demonstrable track record as an instructional leader. In that role, there was concern about having a greater emphasis on a manager as distinguished from an instructional leader. And then also going into the weeds about the belief of any candidate's explanations about change from the societal factors, specifically race and racism, that influence the persistent underachievement of Black and brown students. I have been following Boston Public Schools' progress around this issue, around the achievement gap, for decades. So I'm well aware of that history. Again, I'm just saying that any candidate's evidence beliefs about students that have access to high quality teachers of color, as well as school disciplinary policies and practices that negatively impact students' access to high quality instructional and feedback time, is also related to this particular priority. I've had to make an adjustment on my printed comments before to accommodate what I've heard today, but I will submit this in writing in a final draft. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jose Lopez, followed by Christina Langhoff and Nora Tony.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, School Committee.
Good evening.
Yesterday, my name is Jose Lopez. I'm the Chair of the Education Committee for the Boston branch of the NAACP. Yesterday, we joined other organizations in raising concern regarding the appointment under consideration tonight. Specifically, we are concerned about the lack of process and transparency and the need for greater accountability as it relates to the filling of the interim superintendent role. I will not spend time reiterating those points tonight, but rather will take this opportunity to highlight the fact that there are great models in our own Commonwealth and outside of it for creating a transparent process in the hiring of not a superintendent, but an interim superintendent, and ensuring the input of school leaders, parents, and community members, if that is the will of this body today. To be clear, the single candidate offered to fill the interim role, is not someone known to the Boston branch of the NAACP through our own engagement in educational equity work throughout this city. We are, however, familiar with her philanthropic efforts and applaud her interest and investment in schools, both charter and traditional. That being said, we would expect no less than that the most qualified individual to fill the interim superintendent role, regardless of duration, be seated. It is perplexing to us that in the area with one of the most dynamic education communities in the country, with academics and thought leaders who are proven and driven with teaching and learning expertise, as well as large district operational experience, that you are not considering any other candidates. There's no formal process to elicit applications, either internally or externally, from candidates who might be well qualified and proven to lead this district in the interim. We find that quite frankly stunning. The only candidate presented to you tonight as being qualified for this role is an individual with no experience as an educator or school leader, but someone who's better characterized as a philanthropist, someone who has committee experience. It makes us wonder, how often do people of color apply for jobs, and when we are told we are not qualified, often denied those jobs. In this district, we know of many educators whom, because they lack the requisite licenses as dictated by the district, have found themselves without a job. We've been told time and time again that part of the challenge the district has is recruiting and retaining educators of color comes down to their qualifications, yet for the top job in this instance, the qualification that matters most to our families, experience leading schools, is absent in this candidate. The lack of due process in soliciting internal or external candidates or an opportunity to interview this candidate at public forums is unfair to residents in this city, the children and families of the district, and quite frankly, the candidate herself, because it creates a climate whereby people are fearful to speak and express their true concerns about this process and lack of transparency, therefore creating a divide that fosters mistrust for this candidate. As examples of districts that are actually taking steps to make sure that the process is more equitable and transparent, I'll leave with you today examples from Brookline this year, who decided that they would provide 3 public interviews before a vote by a school committee, not for a superintendent, but for a deputy. In addition, in 2013, Brookline also included parent input to create a list of qualifications. I have examples I'll leave you with Amesbury, Franklin, as well as Newberry, Oregon, all examples where there was a process, quick process for providing for community input, including listing qualifications, including listening tours, and I'll leave those with you for your consideration. Lastly, and I'll close by saying that we are here because the school committee has decided to consider only one candidate despite the opportunity to consider others. The school committee should immediately release a timeline for the permanent superintendent search and move expeditiously to begin the recruitment and selection process. We will judge this process as well as the performance of both the interim and permanent superintendents on the basis of accountability, transparent engagement, and the priorities we've listed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Our next speaker is Christine Langhoff, followed by Nora Toney and Nora McManus-Vincent.
Hi, good evening. I'm Christine Langhoff. I'm a Dorchester resident, a BPS graduate, parent in BPS for 17 years. I also taught high school for 22 years, preceded by 14 years teaching middle school. I'm here tonight because I believe the superintendent of our schools, even if only in an acting capacity, must be an educator. Ms. Real holds no education certificate in Massachusetts. She has no degree other than a BA in international relations, though that might work well with our school population. Her current position of CEO at Edvestors has in no way familiarized her with the myriads of challenges, educational, logistical, humanitarian, and managerial we see each day in our schools as we strive to serve the kids of our city. Professionally credentialed teachers must obtain a master's within 5 years of beginning their careers and must continually update their credentials in order to retain their licenses, as do administrators. Currently, 95% of our teachers in BPS are licensed in their teaching assignment. It's insulting to these professionals to put someone at the head of our schools who has no knowledge of early childhood education, child development, adolescent psychology, special education, or the linguistic needs of our students who are learning in English as their second language. It is demeaning that a person with little institutional knowledge, background in curriculum development, or even in contract law be given a supervisory position over those who possess expertise in these areas. Across the nation, we are seeing the push for privatizing services once commonly understood to fall in the realm of the common good, particularly our public schools. The playbook has 3 parts: defund, destabilize, destroy. That our schools are being defunded is undeniable. 44 of our schools will have less money this coming year than last.
20 seconds.
Certainly the debacle of the rollout and then the rescission of changes to start times in December and the ongoing problem with student assignment process, as well as Superintendent Chang's precipitous departure, contribute to a sense of destabilization, leading some parents to seek other alternatives, such as private schools, charters, or even moving from the city. Ms. Perrell's organization has played a part in that destabilization. I was surprised to learn that she served on school committee assignment, and yet the school department found that for 4 years we have not had the report we were waiting for on school assignments. The Boston Foundation has troubling connections with many privatizers, such as Seth Klarman and his Bauhaus Group, which illegally contributed money during the Question 2 campaign.
Ms. Langhoff?
I'll finish up. The final step in the privatization playbook is to destroy. I believe that taking the deprofessionalization of the position of superintendent will take us one more step along that path. I am troubled that we've not followed the democratic process that is expected in the city which began the tradition of public education. I hope we will do better. Our interests are poorly served, the interests of our students are poorly served by choosing someone whose business up until now has undermined our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nora Toney. She'll be followed by Nora McManus-Vincent and Latarsha Williams.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Nora Toney, past president of the Black Educators Alliance in Massachusetts, and a retired teacher, assistant principal, and principal of the Boston Public Schools. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of our current president, whose mom has recently passed away. The appointment of an interim superintendent is a crucial decision for the Boston School Committee. After the unexpected and abrupt departure of Dr. Chang, and while BPS is in the midst of major reform initiatives, BPS needs an experienced, qualified urban school system leader to restore stability and promote progress. This is a process that should occur with the input of parents, BPS staff, and stakeholders. The mayor and the chair of the school committee are nominating a single candidate as the interim superintendent of BPS. Beam believes this process lacks the transparency required, and this singular candidate does not represent the experience and qualifications to serve as the interim superintendent of BPS. As you know, Boston Public Schools is the largest school system in Massachusetts and the largest department in the city, with staff of over 10,000, a budget over $1 billion, and 125 schools plus the central office staff. Effectively leading a system of the size and complexity of Boston Public Schools requires experience leading and working in a comparable system, not simply partnering with a school system or being served by a school system.
20 seconds.
In Massachusetts, school superintendents are experienced, trained professional educators. According to the DESE website, Ms. Perrell holds no educator licensure. As you know, every year BPS refuses to consider hundreds of applicants without licensure for teaching and school leadership positions, and terminates the contracts of dozens of provisional teachers who are not fully licensed for their positions. Complying with state licensure requirements has a disparate impact on educators of color who apply to BPS. BEAM urges the school committee to continue its search for an interim superintendent and to appoint an educational leader with the requisite experience and qualifications to effectively lead BPS. Most importantly, this school district needs the leadership and direction of an experienced superintendent with the proven ability to guide and supervise the urgent work of eliminating the opportunity and achievement gap. That requires a culturally proficient educator with the expertise to forge excellence in teaching and learning for all of our students. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tomey.
Thank you, Ms. Tomey, and please pass along our condolences to Ms. Bazil. Please pass it on along our condolences to Ms. Bazil. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nora McManus Vincent, and she'll be followed by Latarsha Williams.
Good evening, school committee. I think you guys managed to turn out every education advocate in Boston who's not on vacation this week. Pretty crowded room for July, first week of July. My name's Nora McManus Vincent. I'm a BPS parent of a recent K-2 graduate, and I'm a member of the parent group Quest, Quality Education for Every Student. I am here tonight on behalf of that group to express our support for the Lawyers Committee, for BEAM, for the Boston Network for Black Student Achievement, and the NAACP, and the concerns that they have voiced. We too are concerned about the process through which we've arrived here tonight. The lack of transparency, as Mr. Lopez said, is stunning and does not foster the trust that needs to be built. As a parent and an educator, I think it is imperative that a superintendent of a major urban district have a professional background in school and district leadership, in closing opportunity and achievement gaps, in recruiting and retaining educators of color, in working with students who are English language learners. The idea that creative problem solving and thinking outside the box are not skills that educators possess is not true. This is the work of educators. We also believe that any superintendent of BPS must reflect the rich racial and cultural diversity of our city. A real, robust search for superintendent must take place and must include all stakeholders, families, students, teachers, school leaders, and community members. And they must be engaged not just in offering feedback, but in the decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Latarsha Williams, followed by Teresa Lopes and Reverend Willie Broderick.
Hi, I'm Latasha Williams.
Good evening.
I'm a parent. I'm not an educator. I'm sorry? Well, I'm not, no, I'm a parent. I'm an educator of my child and children around me. But I haven't been trained. I haven't had any certifications of such. I've been trying to gather information just on this whole everything so I have a better understanding on what's going on. And just from everything, that information that I researched, the pros were that she was organized, she's good at fundraising, she's, supportive of art, and she's really likable. Because everybody that's come up here so far knew her from one way or another, and they like her. So her personality may be great, but that's not what we need for our children. Unfortunately, right now, the Boston Public School System has a lot going on. And when I sat and I listened to the person for the SPED PAC speak in regards to her, special education is majorly in trouble. These children are really in trouble because there's a lack of certified teachers teaching special education. The inclusion schools are a mess. It's a mess right now. And when I sit and listen to the things that are being said in support of her, I feel like they're doing the children an injustice because that's not fair to them. This is their life. This is their foundation for their life. The violence, all the things that are going on today in our city, it all can be stopped with the schools, with education. Education is the key to everything. And if you're not an educator, how can you educate? And to be advised on how to do this by advisors, I mean, there's not going to be change, because you're going to get advice from the same people that's been here so far to do this. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. I hope that you guys take time to reconsider the process. I didn't know if I was coming in to speak on behalf of, you know, the community, and you guys were going to consider it. But when I got here, I feel like you guys had already made a decision, because there's nobody else here. So I really don't understand, so I ask a lot of questions. So from now, I just listen, and you can't learn as you go. You can't learn as you go, not in a situation that's already just really bad. We can't do that. It's not fair. I don't have a speech. I was just taking notes as I was going along, and I feel like she has a lot of things that she could give to the community, but not in that position. Fundraising, she brings a lot of money in. That's what I've seen when all the things that were written up, and I hope that's not why she's been chosen, because that's what it looks like to me. She's brought funds in, and she's good at that. Well, make a position for her just for that. Give somebody else the position to run the schools. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be mean. I don't know her. She may be a great person. You know what I mean? But I feel like we all need to work together. And if she has something to bring to the table, then bring her to the table along with someone else that's an educator that can actually do what we need done. Give her a job. I'm saying give her a job, just not that one.
Ms. Williams, thank you very much. We
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Teresa Lopes, Ms. Lopes, and she'll be followed by Reverend Willie Broderick.
Is Teresa Lopes here?
No? Okay. Reverend? Thank you. And he'll be followed by Lisa Jean Graff.
Good evening, Reverend.
Good evening. Good evening. To the school committee, thank you all. My name is Reverend Willie Broderick II, and I'm here representing the Boston Network for Black Student Achievement, also known as BNBSA. I'm here particularly to speak about the decision to move forward with the interim superintendent. Right now, as of June 22nd, we saw the resignation of our former superintendent, and it was only less than a week that we had an appointment for another interim superintendent. I don't see that as efficient. I don't see that as a process that has engaged community voices, as you've heard some of the parents speak about. And there's a lack of transparency in this moment. I believe that this district has chosen to move for expedience over engagement. And that is problematic, not only to myself and to those who signed on to a statement, but to so many community persons who felt that they've been precluded from this process. Right now, I don't doubt that Ms. Laura Perrell is a great person, a great woman of good character and good rapport, and we've heard some of the great works that she has done. However, the profile that she presents is not what this district needs. And right now, in the short term, I want to suggest to this committee that it is just as important as the long term, that we can't reach the goals of the long term that we're looking for if we are not taking seriously what's happening right now. We all know that we have a huge issue as it relates to the opportunity and achievement gap. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. We know that there are students with disabilities and students that are English language learners that need the support and the resources, but also the strategies to move them forward. We know that right now we need a more effective engagement because parents right now don't know what's happening. And I don't think we've done a good job as a city to make sure that they've been engaged and that they even understand what this process looks like. We have a big issue around teacher diversity here in Boston, and right now is not the time to slow down this process. We need to ensure that we're thinking about cultural and cultivating cultural proficiency for our educators in this district. And we need someone who can actually speak to the needs of educators all around. The fact that we're here for a vote is problematic. The fact that we're here right now and the community is responding reactively is problematic. And how can we speak about democracy if there's not a clear, transparent process that is engaging each and every one of us in that? Our children are affected, our communities are affected, and we want this committee to reconsider the process. And we're hoping that a timeline is going to be presented so that we know that we need to be here each and every step of the way to ensure accountability for not only this committee, but for this city writ large. So we're asking for that as the Boston Network for Black Student Achievement. I want you to know that we are here to not only hold you accountable, but to work with you. And we're hoping that as we move forward, that this process will engage each and every member of this community, make sure that our educators are involved, that our parents are involved, and that we're moving this city to make sure that our children get the best that they need, because that's what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you, Reverend. Our next speaker is Lisa Jean Graff, and she'll be followed by Danae Davis and Barbara Fields.
Hello, my name is Lisa Jean Graff. My daughter Beatrice goes to the Mission Hill K-8. I'm here to ask that this process slow down. Interim superintendents often work for a year or two and can also become permanent superintendents. Because of this, more options than one candidate should be considered. The school committee needs to be more transparent with this process as well. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Danae Davis, and she'll be followed by Barbara Fields.
Thank you for this opportunity. Good evening to the school
Good
committee.
evening.
My name is Danae Davis. Thanks for getting my name right. I'm a former BPS student and former BPS teacher. I have an earned doctorate from Boston College in Curriculum and Instruction. I am a proud teacher scholar. I remain active and interested in my community. Learning and advancement of Boston youth is of particular interest. This evening, my questions pertain to the search for the permanent superintendent. Buy-in, and I've learned this as an educator, buy-in and consensus is key for good progress and success. So first, what will be the process of meaningful community participation in the search process? Second, what tools and resources will be provided and made available for parents, students, staff, and stakeholders? Will there be some type of portal or some access where people can gather information? I've heard reference this evening to transparency and authenticity, but seemingly that has not been in play with regard to the appointment of Laura Perel. There is a lot of anecdotal information and a lot of social media resource and fact-finding, but how did you provide a place and or information for the community to access the information that you have relied on in making and gathering and informing this meeting this evening? If you have not provided that information, I ask that you will make sure resources like that are available for the community moving forward. With regard to Laura Perel, I want to say that an engaged parent does not make a capable superintendent, especially of one of the oldest public districts in the country. Another question that I have has to do with my understanding of the review process. Once you move along and have a list of finalists, my understanding is that information is made public. For finalists who may have current positions and may not want that information made public, that certainly is limiting of them, and it is also my understanding that that was the case with Mr. Chang. So those are my comments, certainly thinking about being public and providing opportunities for the community to have information and access with regard to the process for superintendent moving forward. And then finally, just regarding logistics, one way that you might be able to save some money is maybe making two-sided copies on the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Sage advice.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Fields.
Is there anyone following Ms. Fields? Okay, thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Good evening, Ms. Fields.
Good evening. Good evening, Chairperson Locanto and members of the school committee. When I came here, I had no intention whatsoever to speak. I thought there were others who were speaking who would say anything and everything that I wanted to say. And I also wanted to hear the viewpoints of those who may disagree with the positions that we have taken. And I listened to the comments as to what made the nominee the better person for this position, so that you didn't need to look at any one, but one single candidate. And one was, being a parent of BPS. So I start thinking, well, I'm a former parent of the BPS. I'm a former student of the BPS. I graduated from it. I'm a former grandparent of the BPS. And then the other had to do with knowing the district and going in and out of the schools. As you know, I was in the district for 30-some years, and I've been in each and every school in this district. Then there was the issue about, the money. Now, I didn't have any money to give, and I still don't have any money to give, so I don't qualify for that. But I have advocated for equity in this district and the disbursement of the monies that are here in this district. And I have worked as a teacher, as an administrator, and I have worked with the achievement gap, which is why you still see me and I won't leave you alone. So when I looked at all of that, I said, but you know what? Yet I am not qualified to be the superintendent of Boston Public Schools because I know what that position requires. I served directly with 10 superintendents, some of them who kept us here all weekend. I remember one Thanksgiving, we were sitting with LaValle Wilson, and we wanted to go home and cook, and he had his shirt rolled up, and he had his screen down, and we were working on the whole issue around Project Promise at the Timothy. And I know from going with him to meetings what it required in terms of community engagement and all of that. And so yet I feel like I am really not qualified, and I know what, in fact, it takes. So I think what I'd like to say to this district and to Laura is that if we are really serious about educating our children, and this is not about appeasing the mayor or finding someone to come in on an interim basis to possibly be here for long term, then I would ask Laura to withdraw her candidacy and join us in asking you and the mayor to let's work together and find someone who can, in fact, operate this district in the way that it needs to serve all of the children of Boston Public Schools. This is not about Laura, not about her at all. I know her. I know she's an excellent person. This is about who can educate and lead the work of giving all of our children the education that has been, lacking for all of this time. And the urgency is such that we just don't have the time. We don't have the time to just wait. So I'm gonna end there, but I just want to say, please do what's right for this district. And this is not what's right, and you all know it's not what's right. You weren't even engaged in the process initially, so you know it's not right. So we're asking you to stand up. Stand up for our children, and stand up for our communities, and stand up for this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fields.
Ms. Locondo, that concludes our speakers.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Our first and only action item this evening is an offer of employment to Laura Peril to serve as interim superintendent. My fellow committee members, you have in your packets a draft letter offering the position of the interim superintendent to Ms. Peril. And if you'll permit me, I will read from that letter, which I believe summarizes the salient points of the offer, as well as a number of the items that we are asking Ms. Peril to cover during the short-term period of her interim appointment. Dear Ms. Peril, and by the way, for folks that are listening and watching at home, this is the letter that we'll be voting on, or form the basis for the vote this evening. Dear Ms. Peril, I will be pleased to offer you from the Boston School Committee to serve as interim superintendent of the Boston Public Schools, effective immediately upon the July 2, 2018 vote of the committee on this offer. Your start date will be effective upon the execution of an employment contract, and you will serve at the discretion of the committee. Your annualized salary as interim superintendent will be $250,000 with standard benefits commensurate with senior level district staff. We ask that you work collaboratively with Dr. Tommy Chang and the current executive team as you transition into the role of interim superintendent and carry forward the academic innovations that have begun or continued during Dr. Chang's tenure. These include continuing strategies to close identified opportunity and achievement gaps, such as the expansion of the Excellence for All initiative and support for all learners, especially those with language or special needs. Culturally and linguistically sustaining practices, CLSP, that support the diverse students, staff, and communities in the district. And 3, support for the implementation of sustainable social and emotional learning and wellness programs. Additionally, we would expect that you would focus your attention on teacher, school, and district leadership decisions and relationships, balancing the need to be visible in the district while also focused on meeting the needs to open schools effectively in September 2018. Lastly, it is imperative to develop and begin to implement, as appropriate, an authentic community engagement and communications plan for the transformative district-led initiatives of Build BPS, grade configurations, and a response to the recent Ernst & Young Parthenon report on off-track youth. This offer is contingent upon the necessary background checks and your obtaining a first-level superintendent certification from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education within 90 days of this appointment. Thank you, in closing, for your willingness to lead BPS during this critical period. The entire committee thanks you for your years of tireless work in collaborating with the district on whole school improvement and targeted initiatives to increase student growth and performance. We stand ready collectively to work with you as we move our district forward, building on our current success on behalf of our 57,000 youth. Now, before I say anything further, I do want to ask our fellow committee members if they'd like to make some further comments before we move on to a vote. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak first to the folks who spoke tonight, because I really enjoyed is a heck of a word. Folks have said to me over the years, is Miss Harris still here, by the way? I saw Miss Elfrida Harris walk in earlier. I always call her the dean of the school committee because she served, I thought she served 16 years. She corrected me and told me that she served 20, and that she served 20. And my fellow members said recently when I mentioned that this month I hit 10 years in the school committee, they said, are you going to break Miss Harris's record? And I said, absolutely not. But she was the dean of the committee, and I learned an awful lot from her. So if she was still here, first of all, I wanted to call her out. And folks have always said that I listen, and I really do. And so I heard such a wide range of opinions tonight, but I can't move forward personally in this conversation without reflecting a couple of things that I heard. Because we heard people that knew Miss Perel very well speak very highly of her. And yes, they said they can get along with her, and she's experienced, et cetera, in what she has done in her past. But when Mr. Knox spoke, who was the former chairman of her board and has done her reviews and has been a CEO of a major organization, said, you know, does the inherent risk reward work for our organization, its mission? And he felt, yes, that meant a lot to me. But so did a lot of other comments that I heard tonight, and Headmaster McIntyre, and she's still here, I'm not sure, of one of our great schools, the Jeremiah E. Burke, and said, outsiders can stop silos that prevent equity. That made me think. But so hasn't the message from the NAACP and other organizations, and I thank Mr. Lopez for speaking today. And I read that, I read those comments very clearly, and I heard concern over this process, and I also heard concerns about the permanent search and the commitment to opportunity achievement gap. And when I talked about Superintendent Chang earlier, I said how important it is that we as a body make that commitment and continue about the opportunity achievement gap and continue to call it out and make sure that an interim and a permanent, that it is a key part of their work. I also hear the concerns about this process. And you know, when we went through this 4 years ago, it was, I almost hate to say a no-brainer, because we had someone like Mr. McDonough, who was within the district, who everyone nodded and said that makes sense. I do think it is important that we move very quickly on this. We're right at the end of the school year, where the planning is going on now for opening of school day in and day out on the superintendent's team. So I do think it is important. But I also think it is important that this committee recommit itself to an incredibly transparent process for a search for a permanent. And I think that's very important that comes out, because in the absence of information, that feeds concerns. And so folks get concerned about this process when they think the fix is in, and is this a temporary to permanent type thing? I personally am not interested in that. I want to make sure we have a search that is very open. We've done it in the past. I also want to call out, and excuse me, Reverend, I didn't catch your last name, so I apologize for that. Broderick. Thank you, sir. Because I did catch your question about, are we looking at expediency over engagement? And that's a fine trade-off to make. I personally think this committee has to move expeditiously to get an interim in place, but I also think we also have to act expeditiously about starting a very transparent search process for a permanent that has a lot of engagement, and working with the folks that have worked closely with us, who know our district well, who know how important this is. And so I just wanted to call out a couple of the comments, and no disrespect to the other folks. I could speak about all 21 of you. I heard a lot of great comments from so many of you, but you know, folks have different viewpoints on this, but what I see is a lot of concern over process, because the concern about, is there going to be a real search? Is it going to be transparent? Is it going to be engaged? Are we really searching for the best leader for our district on a permanent basis? And I personally want to commit how important that is to me, and I assume it is to fellow members as well, that we have a very transparent process, that we kick it off immediately. And Mr. Chair, I think your comments earlier that you will have it as an agenda item at our July meeting to talk about a search process, because as important it is to have an interim in place right now, I think, quite frankly, the permanent piece is critical, and we need to both make sure it's transparent, make sure there's a lot of engagement, and we are absolutely committed that the forefront is how do we close the opportunity achievement gap for all of our youth. So I felt it imperative to speak about what I heard today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Ms. Robinson, would you like to speak now? Shall I come back? Dr. Uriarte?
I'm glad that Mr. O'Neill came ahead of me and really laid out what I also saw. And in my mind, I'm trying to separate my knowledge and my information and experience with Laura Peril for what has been a very dismal process of appointing her to this situation, to this position. People ask me, what is Laura like? And I tell people, she is smart, she is capable, she is no nonsense. And I think she has proved that with her work at Investors. I've had the opportunity of working with people from Investors very closely in the ELL task force, and it has been a joy. I mean, these are people that are committed and that are very, very effective in what they do. But it's actually unfortunate that Laura gets tangled in what is now a really difficult situation to untangle. To be perfectly honest, I put forward the names of candidates of color that were interested in the position that Laura is going to get. I was told that those candidates of color would not be put forward now, that this was an interim position, and that there would not be a permanent possibility for the person that took this position now. I am becoming a little bit worried about whether that's a promise that will actually be carried out. But and I know that Ms. Peril will has every right to participate in the search if it is open. But the fact is that that was a door that was not open to other candidates to walk through. They were not allowed to walk through because of the wish for them to continue, for them to have a long-term presence in the school, in the long-term search. And these were candidates with strong records of service and strong capacity. People have been prior superintendents, etc. So, I mean, having worked for the state, I know that, you know, you cannot hire somebody to work full-time unless you go through a search. So we will have to go through a search. And I think the commitment that I can make to those of you that feel like me in this situation is that I will be as vigilant as I have been from the moment that I got wind of what was coming down. I will, you know, be talking to people and working with people, making sure that we have an open process for the permanent person.
Dr. Uriarte, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you please use your microphone? I just
I'm
want to make sure
trying
it's
to-
captured on the record as well.
So that in many ways I feel this conflict between the person that I know and the process that she's becoming entangled in at this point. And again, let me say the process has been confusing. It has not been transparent. It has not allowed for alternatives to be considered in any real way. It has basically, I think, from my experience in the school committee, and this is, I think, something that all of us here are very conscious of. We are the first line of public accountability of the schools, and that we have to be very conscious of that, and we have to make a real commitment to really weave relationships of trust between the district and the public. This has gone against everything that I believe that will further that position. Again, we have to do better with that. We have to do better, and I'm hoping that as we, you know, think about how we want to go forward together, now that we will commit to an open, totally open process of search for the permanent superintendent of the Boston Public Schools. Again, I will, as I promised, I will promise Laura that she had my support in this position for an interim position. And again, I think that we need to make sure that we build around her the kinds of supports that will make her a successful superintendent. I've committed to her that I will work with her to make her time in BPS a success, because of 57,000 children that depend on her doing well. And so with that, I cannot tell you the last 2 weeks have been, or the last 10 days have been very, very hard, very, very harsh. As Michael O'Neill said, I think we have all thought through, what are we doing here? Who are we? How do we move forward with this kind of thing? And again, I think others will hopefully talk to the sort of the damage that it does to the school committee itself and the integrity of the school committee itself when this kind of situation moves forward. So again, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Dr. Uriarte. Ms. Oliver Davila.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody who came out and made comments. I know it's July 4th week, and that's a lot, because I know a lot of people go away. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you for all of your really thoughtful comments. I think all of us have struggled with what's happened with the process, and I agree with Mr. O'Neill. This is not the way that we wanted it to be, and I think it is some self-reflection needed in terms of how we also evaluate our superintendent and what we're evaluating them on and the type of work, again, to be more transparent so that we do set up the next superintendent for success, and at the same time that this is not the perfect process. I totally agree, it's not. I'm a community organizer, so this is absolutely not a perfect process at all. But at the same time, we do need to move forward, and we need to move forward together. And the only reason I even want to say anything is because I think it's important that all of us speak to the fact that we are all committed to having a transparent process, that all of us spoke before this meeting to talk about really making sure that the search process starts right away. We have an interim superintendent, and that's great to hold down the fort and lay out the pieces that we've laid out in this letter, but we need to move forward to find that next superintendent who's going to really move us to the next level. So I do commit to that, and again, I thank everybody for your comments.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver-Davila. Dean Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to echo my team members' comments and also just add a few of my own. I appreciate this team. I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the experiences that we all bring to this role, a very important role, and I think we all weigh this burden of responsibility greatly. And so I appreciate that. I also want to just share my appreciation to you all in the public, because being a member of the Boston School Committee means that we are a member of the public. And we are a member of a community with many different backgrounds. So I'm encouraged to hear from educators, I'm encouraged to hear from parents, I'm encouraged to hear from leaders in our community, and people with various roles, because we all bring very unique qualities and very unique experiences to this process. So I want to say I appreciate the things that have been said, because this has been, outside of social media, this has been the only public forum that you all have been able to have. And so I echo my team members' sentiments that you're here this evening on the week that many would probably want to head to vacation. So I want to just applaud you on that front, number one. And then number two, the serious concerns that you have raised have been raised as well. So you aren't alone. This has in no way has been a process that a lot of questions have not been asked, and a lot of answers have had to be provided. And so I want to thank you for your questions. I want to thank you for your feedback. And I also want to thank you for the support and the criticism, because we need both as we weigh various decisions. From the sidebar conversations, the emails that you have sent to us, the phone calls, the text messages, the run-ins in the shoe store and the grocery store. I want to say thank you. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy when I wear various hats in the community, but I do want to tell you that your voice is heard. This will be a transparent process for the permanent superintendent. Having been on that process before and having had many conversations with the public in the past during the previous search, I know how critical it is for all voices to matter in this process. And so I do believe, and Mr. O'Neill, you stated it clearly, that we do need to recommit ourselves to this process of transparency and to this process of authentic engagement. I also want to just applaud the efforts that Ms. Perel has made to this point, and the work that has been done in our community, in our schools, with our kids. I want to say thank you for even considering this opportunity, because it is a complex role and a great burden of responsibility that we all share. But I do want to note that the community's voice needs to be heard, and I appreciate this time that we've had tonight, and I really look forward to the process moving forward.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. Ms. Robinson?
I want to echo my colleagues' voices in saying thank you, but I also want to say I'm sorry. I think we all feel sorry, but I want to say sorry to the community that here we are again in the midst of a very important issue for our community and not being happy where we stand at this moment. I think I can say on behalf of my colleagues that we're not any happier than you are, but time is of the essence. We've asked these same questions. We want to move forward with a very transparent search. We want to know what we've learned from this past 3 years, what we've learned from the previous search, but how do we make sure that we keep all of the voices and the issues that you've raised tonight alive, both through this interim transition period, as well as moving forward onto the permanent search. Where we are now is where we are. I think every single thing that people have said will certainly be the issues that continue to be looked at as we move forward. But at this point in time, that's what we have to do. We have to move forward. But I hope that as we move forward, we will not find ourselves yet again coming together and having to say, please stop. We're moving too fast. We need a transparent process that really is transparent, that is respectful not only to you, but also to us who have taken on this responsibility of being here. We're here because we care. We care about all the children that are in this district. Sometimes it feels like a very thankless job because for 57,000 people, there is no one person or one situation that's going to make everybody happy. As many people are happy with one decision, the same equal number or more are unhappy. We're trying to do the best with the situations as they come before us, but we need your help in not only coming with opinion, but helping us to figure out how on a day-to-day basis do we all keep moving forward for our students, because that's what we're all here. So even after we leave here tonight, the work is just beginning. We're here to support Laura in the work that she will move forward, but she's not going to move forward alone. And all of the issues that we care about for all of our students need to be in the front of all of us as we move forward. So.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Mr. O'Neill, you had something additional.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and I apologize for speaking twice, but when I reflected on my comments, I was so focused in thinking about the lessons that we've learned, what we heard, and also the commitment about a search going forward that is authentic, that is engaging, that is transparent. I realized somewhat to my neglect that I had not said anything about Ms. Perrell. And I do want to say that, you know, as you try to think through within the district, you know, who would be qualified? I mean, last time Mr. McDonough was almost a no-brainer, right? And yet, as you try to think through who was qualified, if you stop, and I hear the comments from folks that say it should be an experienced educator. I get that. I truly understand it, and I want to say that I respect those comments because I've thought about that a lot myself. If you step back just a little and maybe go just a smidge beyond within BPS itself, literally one of the first candidates that come to mind is Ms. Perrell. And it seems like a strange choice, but when you stop and think about it and the work that she's done, and I will say, you know, they say first responders are folks that run towards challenges. They'll run into fires. They'll run into unsafe situations, the police and fire. Ms. Perrell has been a first responder for us. When we have asked her to run into particular challenges the district has faced, she has done it, be it the arts piece, the finding innovation, or right now working on math. And she and her organization know the district very, very well. They have worked closely with us, and I've heard from an incredible amount of school leaders who have been supportive of this choice because they know that how well she knows the schools. Having said that, so I am supportive of Ms. Perrell in the interim role and look forward to a full and transparent process going forward for the permanent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. And you know, first I want to thank all of you, my fellow committee members. We talk a lot, but never so much as in the last week, I believe. This has been a couple weeks of very rapid transition in this district. But I'm confident that we're going to emerge stronger because of it. Change is tough. And, you know, when you have change, you have to reflect back on what it is that makes you strong and what it is that makes you resilient and what it is that it allows a district to reconstitute itself, or anyone or anything to reconstitute itself and carry itself forward. And you know, I look around this room and I've listened to everyone that's spoken. I've listened to everyone that's spoken to me, to my committee member, my fellow committee members, to anyone really involved in these discussions over the last few weeks. And it gives me hope. And it's specifically because I know that no matter the differences that we have, we all come at it from the same perspective, which is We want what's best for the 57,000 kids in this district, the 128 schools in this district, the 12,000 employees in this district. We want this district to succeed because we know what that means to everyone in this city. We know what it means to the kids. We know what it means to the long-term economic vitality of this district. And we need to continue that with all deliberate urgency. And so when we think about, what are the things that lie ahead? First, we have the start of school in September. Then we have carrying on the initiatives that we've spoken about at a number of points this evening. Things like the strategies to reduce the opportunity achievement gaps, things to attack social and emotional learning and wellness, culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. This is the core work of our district. We have the plans and the pieces in place, and we need someone to carry it forward, and we need to do it in a transparent way, in a way that speaks to our communities and allows our communities to be heard. I hear you loud and clear, and we have all heard you loud and clear, that you don't feel that you've been heard in this process. I get that. But at the same time, we do need to move swiftly to sustain this district and move forward. We need someone at the top to do that. And so when we thought about what we needed somebody that knew this district. We needed somebody that could hit the ground running. And we knew we needed someone who had the abilities and skills and wherewithal to do what we need on big ticket items, which is take things like Build BPS, like grade configuration, like all the reports that we have on off-track youth and what's coming with home-based equity analysis, and translate that into a language that is simple, that we can all understand, that we can all get behind, and that what works inside also works on the outside. And so that's the work that we are asking Ms. Perel to do. And when we think about Ms. Perel, we've heard from so many folks testifying about her tonight. A number of the committee members have spoken as well. She fits a lot of those bills. And she fits that bill specifically for the short term. This is truly an interim position. Our goal is to move with all available speed towards the search for a permanent superintendent in this district. We owe our children nothing less. We owe the people of this district nothing less. And that's why I started out my comments very intentionally tonight, because I've heard a number of the comments previous to the meeting questioning what is the next step. Well, quite frankly, we've been working so expeditiously in trying to end one chapter with our last superintendent and begin a chapter with our interim superintendent, that now is the time for us to move forward and start thinking and discussing about what that search looks like. And that's why I have asked for an executive session to be scheduled at the next school committee meeting to begin that conversation and then report out to all of you later during the public meeting. And I give you as my word that any meeting that you come to in the fall, chances are you're going to have a superintendent search update. We had a search that went on for 2 years last time. The intent was to be 1 year, but it became 2. We've had a number of conversations that that's not what we're looking for this time around. We owe it to our children. We owe it to all these issues that have faced us for years, for decades. Getting this district right so that we can do the work we need to do to support our kids that need it most is job number 1 for us. And we need a permanent leader for that. So we will move expeditiously in that regard, and we will want public input, participation, and ownership of that process. So with that, again, I thank everyone that's come out tonight, who's talked to us for the last 2 weeks, for the participation of my fellow members in this conversation, and for Ms. Perel for frankly having the courage to take on this awesome task. This is life-changing work. This is life-changing work that all of our educators do in this district every day. But if we can crack the nut of how to fix this district for going forward, if you can help us tell that story, if you can help us carry on that work that has begun under Dr. Chang and is so urgent to closing the opportunity and achievement gaps that we have identified as the goal of this committee in this district, then you've done us a great service. So if there's nothing further, I'd entertain a motion to approve and offer employment to Laura Peril, to serve as interim superintendent as presented. Thank you, Ms. Oliver Davila. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Oliver Davila?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Jerry Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Regina Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Uriarte? Mr. Lecanto?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Well, thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Ms. Peril, it gives me great pleasure to honor you and welcome you and offer to you the position of interim superintendent of the Boston Public Schools. Would you like to come up and say a few words to us before we leave?
Thank you, Chairman Lecanto and members of the school committee, and I want to apologize for having my back to everyone who is in the room, who has taken the time to come out and share their thoughts and concerns, many of which I share, given the challenges of this moment. And I have listened carefully tonight and appreciate all of the comments, both support, but also much more importantly, concerns. And both concerns with the process, which I believe that the school committee will carry forward in their due deliberation of the search process for a permanent candidate moving forward, but also concerns about the urgency of the work before us in this interim period while a permanent leader is chosen. And I can say, not only as someone who has dedicated her work, both the visible work, some of which was mentioned tonight, but the deep behind-the-scenes work that I think many pointed to, the unglamorous work out in the schools, the many hours and many years spent on committees and putting together complicated processes that have been aimed at closing opportunity and achievement gaps for all of our students. That work is important, but it is also the lens of a parent, a longtime parent, and I speak here not just of the motivation that brought me for my own children, but profoundly for the needs of all of our children. I believe that public education is one of our last remaining social contracts. I believe that excellent schools have the ability to change a child's life trajectory, and I believe that collective effort that breaks down silos, that looks differently at how we approach problems, but most importantly, and I think this is one of the skill sets that I do bring, most importantly, deliberately puts the voices of frontline educators, both teachers and school leaders, at the forefront of our decision-making, of our planning, but when I say voice, I mean voice. And so that indeed is one of the things that I will be focused on during this transition period. And I too thank Dr. Chang for his dedicated 3 years of service. Some of you know, some of you don't. I served on the search committee that helped to select him. I was a part of the last transparent community process that led to a permanent superintendent. I also was deeply supportive of the interim superintendent during that period and understood the value of what could be accomplished during an interim period when strategies and processes can be put into place that can be springboards for future action by a permanent superintendent. And so I bring that thinking with me. But one of the things I do know and understand is that over the past 3 years, I have been one of the collaborators and workers who have seen the struggles of this district in moving forward. I have a deep appreciation and personal knowledge of many of the excellent and dedicated staff, teachers, educators, and school leaders of this district. I believe that my work during this interim period is to clear roadblocks and put their work at the center. And that is true in how we open the school year smoothly by making sure that central office is focused on providing support and resources to the frontline educators and school leaders. I also believe that, and this is a very important priority for me, I believe that part of that is reestablishing and reconnecting a trust-based, transparent, and open communication relationship with our school leaders in particular, who are the front lines to our school community. We have lots of evidence that that has broken down, and that is first and foremost, but that is only beginning with school leaders, who then represent the teachers, who must also be a part of this, the staff, the students, families, and the many community advocates who support them. So I think those are my two primary focuses. I believe that some of that conversation will also help us approach many of the complicated, thorny challenges ahead of this district, which have been named tonight, all of which require at least the beginning, even during an interim period, because we cannot mark time for our students and our children, but can begin to lay out the way forward around some of these big challenges that must be undergirded by a significant and transparent community engagement process. With all of that in mind, I want to close by thanking not just this school committee, which has been through a very difficult transition, but I really want to salute the teachers, staff, and school leaders, but also the central office personnel, who all come to this work because they wish to do the best we can by all of the children of this city. I am honored and humbled to be a small part of that in this process moving forward. And I would have to say that many of the words tonight struck me deeply, resonate with my own approach, and none more clearly than words that I was thinking this morning, and I heard at least one school committee member say tonight, I think in particular Miren, and that is that I too carry the weight of 57,000 children very, very heavily with me every day as I enter this work. It weighs upon me greatly. I am eager to join others for whom this is their life's passion and work throughout this building and across the community, because I believe that the Boston Public Schools has the possibility to meet not just the needs of our students, but to leverage their assets and support their aspirations and hopes. And that is what will bring me to this job, however difficult, however short, however complicated, as we all seek to move forward on behalf of the students and families that we serve. So thank you, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Regardless of where your opinions stand, I stand ready to move forward working with not only everyone in this room, both behind me and in front of me, but most particularly the educators in our community who carry this work, touch our children and our students, and to whom central office must provide support so that they can do the best job possible on behalf of all of our students. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Farrell. And Ms. Farrell, again, you know this is an awesome task, and we know that you'll attack it with how you've attacked every other project you've taken on in your life. And we are, once again, here to support you, and you've heard in this room that folks are here to work towards that common good that you described. And so we can't wait to get started with you. Can't wait to hear your first superintendent's report on July 16th, only 14 days away. So you got plenty of time to prepare, but we'll see you back here, same time, same place. Ms. Sullivan, any new business? All right, that concludes our business for this evening. Our next school committee meeting will take place on Monday, July 16th at 6 p.m. As a reminder, that is a new date. If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Dean Robinson. That's a second from Mr. O'Neill. Looks like unanimous consent. Good night.